However, we still needed to convert the cash flow coming from the business into even more tangible assets that would generate additional cash flow. We had grown our business into a success. Now it was time to focus on growing our assets to the point where the cash flow from all of our assets would be greater than our living expenses. By 1994, the passive income from all of our assets was greater than our expenses. At that point, we were wealthy. Our business is considered an asset because it generated income and operated without much physical input. For our own personal sense of wealth, we wanted to make sure we also had tangible assets, such as real estate and stocks, that were throwing off more passive income than our expenses before we claimed to be wealthy. Once the income coming from tangible assets in our asset column was greater than the money coming in from the business, we sold the business to our partner. We were now wealthy. The definition of wealth. The definition of wealth is the number of days you can survive without physically working, or anyone else in your household physically working, and still maintain your standard of living. For example, if your monthly expenses are $5,000 a month and you have $20,000 in savings, your wealth is approximately 4 months or 120 days. Wealth is measured in time, not dollars. By 1994, Kim and I were wealthy indefinitely, barring great economic changes, because the income from our investments was greater than our monthly expenses. Ultimately, it's not how much money you make that matters, but how much money you keep, and how long that money works for you. Every day I meet many people who make a lot of money, but all of their money goes out the expense column. Every time they make a little more money, they go shopping. They often buy a bigger house or a new car, which results in long-term debt and more hard work. Nothing is left to go into the asset column. The money goes out so fast that you'd think they took some kind of financial laxative. Their cash flow pattern looks like this. Redline finances. In the world of cars, there's a saying about keeping the engine at a red line. Redline means the throttle is keeping the RPMs of the engine close to the red line, the maximum speed the car's engine can maintain without blowing up. Many people, rich and poor, operate constantly at the financial red line of their personal finances. No matter how much money they make, they spend it as fast as it comes in. The trouble with operating your car's engine at the red line is that the life expectancy of the engine is shortened. The same is true with operating your finances at the red line. Several of my doctor friends say that one of the main problems they see today is stress caused by working hard and never having enough money. One says that the biggest cause of health disorders is something she calls cancer of the wallet. Money making money. Regardless of how much money people make, ultimately they should put some in the I quadrant. The I quadrant is where your money makes more money. It's based on the idea that your money works hard so you don't have to work. Although the I quadrant is important to your financial health, there are other forms of investing worth noting. Other forms of investing. People invest in their education. Traditional education is important. The more education you have, the better your chances may be to earn more money, depending on your choice of profession. Given that the average person spends 40 years or more actively working, college or some type of higher education may be a good investment. Giving your loyalty and best efforts to an employer is another form of investment. In return, via contract, the employee is rewarded with a pension for life. This was a form of investment popular in the industrial age that is now almost obsolete in the information age. Other people invest in having large families and, in turn, have their children care for them in their old age. That form of investing was the norm in the past, yet due to economic constraints in the present, it has become more difficult for families to handle the living and medical expenses of parents. Government retirement programs such as Social Security and Medicare, which are often paid for through payroll deductions, are another form of investment mandated by law. Due to massive changes in demographics and costs, this form of investment will probably not be able to keep many of the promises it has made. And there are independent investment vehicles for retirement that are called individual retirement plans. Often, the federal government will offer tax incentives to both the employer and employee to participate in such plans. In America, one popular plan is the 401k retirement plan. In countries such as Australia, they are called superannuation plans. Income received from investments. Although the above are all forms of investing, the I quadrant focuses on investments that generate income on an ongoing basis during your working years. So to qualify as a person who operates as an I, use the same criteria used in all of the other quadrants. Do you receive current income from the I quadrant? In other words, is your money working for you and generating current income for you? Let's look at a person who buys a house as an investment and rents it out. If the rent collected is greater than the expenses to operate the property, that income is coming from the I quadrant. The same is true for people who receive interest from savings, or dividends from stocks and bonds. So the qualifier for the I quadrant is how much income you generate from the quadrant without working in it. Is my retirement account a form of investment? Regularly putting money into a retirement account is the form of investing people in the E quadrant are most encouraged to take. These retirement plans are not without risk and, even when they perform, the rate of return is never going to make you financially free. Most of us want to be investors when our working years are over, but for the sake of this book, the I quadrant represents a person whose income comes from investments during their working years. In reality, most people aren't investing in a retirement account. Instead, most are saving money in their retirement account, hoping that when they retire, there will be more money coming out than they put in. There's a difference between people who save money in their retirement accounts and people who, through investing, actively use their money to make more money as income. Are stockbrokers investors? Many financial advisors in the investment world are, by definition, not really people who generate their income from the I quadrant. For example, most stockbrokers, real estate agents, financial advisors, bankers, and accountants are predominantly E's or S's. In other words, their income comes from their professional work, not necessarily from assets they own. I have friends who are stock traders. They buy stocks low and hope to sell high. In reality, their profession is trading, much like a person who owns a retail shop and buys items at wholesale and sells them at retail. There's still something they physically must do to generate the money, so they would fit more into the S quadrant than the I quadrant. Can all of these people be investors? The answer is yes, but it is important to know the difference between someone who earns money from commissions, sells advice by the hour, or tries to buy low and sell high compared to someone who earns money from spotting or creating good investments. There's one way to find out how good your advisors are. Ask them what percentage of their income comes from commissions or fees versus the percentage that comes from passive income from their investments or other businesses they own. I have several CPA friends who tell me, without violating client confidentiality, that many professional investment advisors have little in the way of income from investments. In other words, they don't practice what they preach. Advantages of income from the I quadrant. So the primary distinction of people who earn their money from the I quadrant is that they focus on having their money make money. If they're good at it, they can have that money work for them and for their family for hundreds of years. Besides the obvious advantages of knowing how to make money with money and not having to get up and go to work, there are also many tax advantages that aren't available to people who have to work for their money. One of the reasons the rich get richer is because they can make millions and pay, legally, little or no tax on that money. That's because they make money in the asset column, not in the income column. They make money as investors, not workers. Moreover, people who work for money are often taxed at higher rates than investors, and their taxes are withheld from their wages. They never even see that portion of their income. Why aren't more people investors? The I quadrant is the quadrant for working less, earning more, and paying less in taxes. So why aren't more people investors? The reason is the same reason many people don't start their own businesses. It can be summed up in one word: risk. Many people don't like the idea of handing over their hard-earned money and, possibly, not having it come back. Many people are so afraid of losing that they choose not to invest, no matter how much money they could make in return. A Hollywood celebrity once said, "It's not the return on the investment that I worry about. It's the return of the investment." This fear of losing money seems to divide investors into four broad categories. 1. People who are risk averse and do nothing but play it safe, keeping their money in the bank. 2. People who turn the job of investing over to someone else, such as a financial advisor or mutual fund manager. 3. Gamblers. 4. Investors. The difference between a gambler and an investor is simple. For a gambler, investing is a game of chance. For an investor, investing is a game of skill. And for the people who turn their money over to someone else to invest, investing is often a game they don't want to learn. The important thing for these individuals is to choose a financial advisor carefully. Later in this book, I'll go into the 5 levels of investors which should shed more light on this subject. Risk can be virtually eliminated. The good news about investing is that risk can be greatly minimized or even eliminated, and you can still receive high yields on your money, if you know the game. A true investor wants to recoup his or her money quickly. People who have a retirement account have to wait years to find out if they'll ever get their money back. This is the most extreme difference between a professional investor and someone who sets money aside for retirement. It's the fear of losing money that causes most people to seek security. Yet the I quadrant is not as treacherous as many people think. The I quadrant is like any other quadrant. It has its own skills and mindset. The skills to be successful in the I quadrant can be learned if you're willing to take the time to learn. A new age begins. In 1989 the Berlin Wall was torn down, as was communism. This, in my opinion, signaled the end of the industrial age and the start of the information age. The difference between industrial age pension plans and information age pension plans. The voyage of Columbus in 1492 roughly coincides with the start of the industrial age. The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 is the event that marked the end of that age. For some reason, it seems that every 500 years in modern history, great cataclysmic changes occur. We're in one such period right now. That change has already threatened the financial security of hundreds of millions of people, most of whom are not yet aware of the financial impact of that change and many of whom can't afford it. The change is found in the difference between an industrial age pension plan and an information age pension plan. When I was a boy, my rich dad encouraged me to take risks with my money and learn to invest. He'd always say, "If you want to get rich, you need to learn how to take risks. Learn to be an investor." At home I told my educated dad about my rich dad's suggestion that we learn how to invest and manage risk. My educated dad replied, "I don't need to learn how to invest. I have a government pension plan, a pension from the teachers union, and guaranteed social security benefits. Why take risks with my money?" My educated dad believed in industrial age pension plans, such as government employee pensions and social security. He was happy when I signed up for the U.S. Marine Corps. Instead of being worried that I might lose my life in Vietnam, he simply said, "Stay in for 20 years, and you'll get a pension and medical benefits for life." Although still in use, such pension plans are becoming obsolete. The idea of a company being financially responsible for your retirement and the government picking up the balance of your retirement needs through pension schemes is an old, outdated idea. People need to become investors. As we move from defined benefit pension plans, or what I call industrial age retirement plans, to defined contribution pension plans, or information age pension plans, the result is that you, as an individual, must now be financially responsible for yourself. Amazingly, few people have noticed the change and understand its ramifications. Industrial age pension plans. In the industrial age, a defined benefit pension plan meant that the company guaranteed you, the worker, a defined amount of money, usually paid monthly, for as long as you lived. People felt secure because these plans assured a steady income. Information age pension plans. But in 1974, the rules changed with the passage of the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, ERISA. Suddenly, companies were no longer guaranteeing financial security at the end of your working days. Instead, employers began offering defined contribution retirement plans. Defined contribution means that you only get back what you and the company have contributed while you were working. In other words, your pension is defined solely by what has been contributed. If you and your company put no money in, then you get no money out. The good news is that, in the information age, life expectancy has increased. The bad news is that you might outlive your pension, if you even have one. Risky pension plans. What many people don't understand is that whatever you and your employer put into the plan is no longer guaranteed to exist when you decide to pull it out. This is because plans like the 401k and the superannuation are subject to market forces. In other words, one day you could have $1 million in the account. But, if there were a stock market crash, which every market occasionally has, your $1 million could be cut in half or even wiped out. With defined contribution plans, the guarantee of lifelong income is gone. People today, who retire at age 65 and begin to live on their defined contribution plan, could run out of money by, let's say, age 75. Then what do? Dust off the resume? And what about the government's defined benefit pension plan? Well, in the United States, Social Security is expected to be bankrupt by the year 2037, with Medicare bankrupt by 2017. Even today, Social Security doesn't provide much in the way of income. What will happen when 77 million baby boomers begin to want the money they paid in? But it's not there? In 1998, President Clinton's popular cry of "Save Social Security" was well received. Yet, as Democratic Senator Ernest Hollings pointed out, obviously, the first way to save Social Security is to stop looting it. For decades, the federal government has been responsible for borrowing the retirement money for expenditures, a government-sanctioned Ponzi scheme. Many politicians seem to think that Social Security is income that can be spent, rather than an asset that should be held in trust. Too many people counting on the government. I write my books and create products, such as the educational cash flow board game, because the industrial age is history, and we must prepare for the opportunities of the information age. My concern as a private citizen is that, from my generation forward, we aren't properly prepared to handle the differences between the industrial age and the information age. A case in point is how we prepare financially for our retirement years. The idea of go to school and get a safe, secure job was a good one for people born before 1930. Today, everyone needs to go to school to prepare for a job or career, but we also need to know how to invest, and investing is not a subject taught in school. One of the problems created by the industrial age is that too many people are dependent upon the government to solve their individual problems. Today we're facing even bigger problems because we have delegated our personal financial responsibility to the government. It's estimated that by the year 2020, there will be 275 million Americans, with 100 million of them expecting some kind of government support. This will include federal employees, military retirees, postal workers, teachers, other government employees, and retirees expecting Social Security and Medicare payments. They're contractually correct in expecting government support because, in one way or another, most have been investing into that promise throughout their working lives. Unfortunately, there were too many promises made for too many years. Now the bill is coming due. I don't think those financial promises can be kept. If our government begins to raise taxes even higher to pay for those promises, those who can escape will escape to countries that have lower taxes. In the information age, the term offshore won't necessarily mean another country as a tax haven. Offshore could mean cyberspace. A great change is at hand. I recall President John F. Kennedy warning, "A great change is at hand." Well, the change is here. Investing without being investors. The change from defined benefit to defined contribution pension plans is forcing millions of people throughout the world to become investors, with little investor education. Many people who have spent their lives avoiding financial risks are now being forced to take them. Most will find out when it comes time to retire whether they were wise investors, or careless gamblers. Today, the stock market is fueled by many things. one of which is non-investors trying to become investors. Their financial path looks like this: a large majority of these people, the E's and S's, are people who by nature are security-oriented. That's why they seek secure jobs or start small businesses they can control. Because of the defined contribution retirement plans, they're migrating today to the I quadrant, where they hope they'll find security when their working years are over. Unfortunately, the I quadrant is not known for its security. The I quadrant is the quadrant of risk. Because so many people on the left side of the cash flow quadrant come looking for security, the stock market responds in kind. That's why you often hear the following words. 1. Diversification. People who seek security use the word diversification a lot. Why? Because the strategy of diversification is an investment strategy for not losing. It's not an investment strategy for winning. Successful or rich investors don't diversify. They focus their efforts. Warren Buffett, possibly the world's greatest investor, says this about diversification: the strategy we've adopted precludes our following standard diversification dogma. Many pundits would therefore say the strategy must be riskier than that employed by more conventional investors. We disagree. We believe that a policy of portfolio concentration may well decrease risk if it raises, as it should, both the intensity with which an investor thinks about a business and the comfort level he must feel with its economic characteristics before buying into it. In other words, Warren Buffett is saying that portfolio concentration, or focusing on a few investments rather than diversifying, is a better strategy. In his mind, concentration rather than diversification requires you to become smarter and more intense in your thoughts and actions. His article goes on to say that average investors avoid volatility because they think volatility is risky. Warren Buffett says instead, in fact, the true investor welcomes volatility. When Kim and I were escaping from financial struggle to financial freedom, we didn't diversify. We concentrated our investments. 2. Blue chip stocks. Security-minded investors usually buy blue chip companies. Why? Because in their mind, they're safer. While the company might be safer, the stock market is not. These stocks won't protect your money in a market free fall. 3. Mutual funds. People who know little about investing feel more secure turning their money over to a fund manager who they hope will do a better job than they can. This is a smart strategy for people who have no intention of becoming professional investors. But the problem is that, as smart as this strategy is, it doesn't mean that mutual funds are less risky. Today, the market is filled with millions of people who, by nature, are security-minded. But, due to the changing economy, they are being forced to cross from the left side of the cash flow quadrant into the right side, where their brand of security doesn't really exist. That causes me concern. Great economic upheaval is coming. The stage is set for a great economic upheaval. Such upheavals have always marked the end of an old era and the birth of a new one. At the end of every age, there are people who move forward, and other people who cling to ideas of the past. I'm afraid that people who still believe their financial security is the responsibility of a big company or big government will be disappointed in the coming years. Those are ideas of the industrial age, not the information age. No one has a crystal ball. I subscribe to many investment news services and each one says something different. Some say the near future is bright. Some say a market crash and major depression are right around the corner. To remain objective, I listen to both sides, because both have points worth listening to. I do not play fortune teller, trying to predict the future. Instead, I work at staying educated in both the B and I quadrants and being prepared for whatever happens. A person who is prepared will prosper no matter which direction the economy goes, whenever it goes. If history is any indicator, a person who lives to the age of 75 should anticipate going through one depression and two major recessions during his or her lifetime. My parents went through their depression, but the baby boomers have not, yet. Today we all need to be concerned with more than just job security. I think we must also focus on our own long-term financial security and not leave that responsibility to a company or the government. The times officially changed when companies said that they were no longer responsible for your retirement years. Once they switched to the defined contribution retirement plan, the message was that you were now responsible for investing in your own retirement. Today, we all need to become wiser investors, always aware of the ups and downs of the financial markets. I recommend learning to be an investor rather than giving your money to somebody else to invest for you. If you simply turn your money over to a mutual fund or to an advisor, you may have to wait until you're 65 to find out if that person did a good job. If they did a lousy job, you may have to work for the rest of your life. Millions of people will have to do just that because it will be too late for them to invest or learn about investing. Learn to manage risk. It is possible to invest for high returns with low risk. All you have to do is learn how it's done. It is not hard. In fact, it's much like learning how to ride a bike. In the early stages, you may fall down, but after a while, the falling stops and investing becomes second nature, just as riding a bicycle is for most of us. The problem with the left side of the cash flow quadrant is that most people go there to avoid financial risk. Instead of avoiding risk, I recommend learning how to manage financial risk. Take a risk. People who take risks change the world. Few people ever get rich without taking risks. Too many people have come to depend on the government to eliminate the risks of life. The beginning of the information age should have ushered in an era of smaller government because big government is frankly too expensive to maintain. But rather than becoming savvy, educated investors, millions of people around the world have bought into the archaic idea of entitlements and pensions for life. This simply isn't feasible. The information age means we all need to become more self-sufficient, grow up and take personal responsibility for our retirement. The idea of study hard and find a safe, secure job is an idea born in the industrial age. We're not in that age anymore. The times are changing. The problem is that many people's ideas have not changed. They still think they're entitled to something. Many still think that the I quadrant is not their responsibility. They continue to think that the government, big business, a labor union, their mutual funds, or their family will take care of them when their working days are over. For their sake, I hope they're right. These individuals have no need to read further. Rich Dad's Cash Flow Quadrant was written to help individuals who want to make the move from the left side to the right side but don't know where to start. Anyone can make the move with the right skills and determination. If you've already found your own financial freedom, I say, congratulations. Please tell others about your path and guide them if they want to be guided. Teach them, but let them find their own path, for there are many paths to financial freedom. Regardless of what you decide, please remember this: financial freedom might be free, but it doesn't come cheap. Freedom has a price, and to me it's worth that price. The big secret is this: it takes neither money to be financially free, nor a good formal education. It also doesn't have to be risky. Instead, freedom's price is measured in dreams, desire, and the ability to overcome disappointments that occur along the way. Are you willing to pay the price? One of my fathers paid the price. The other didn't. But he paid a different kind of price. The B Quadrant Quiz. Are you a true business owner? You are if you can answer yes to the following question: can you leave your business for a year or more and return to find it more profitable and running better than when you left it? 2. Yes. 1. No.